Hello, this is now me again with a strange thing. It's a whole complex situation, and it is of interest only to those who are interested in building up. This is to prove it is today, 26, and thinking about the audience. It is a thing where I go abroad. It had been a time building up. It had, when it started, me to develop the things, no, to understand, develop my worldview. And from the start, it was clear this is what is in a collection to give the general idea. But people worked on the idea to make it a better system. And each area is expected to work on better living conditions. And now understanding there is a living condition I have to report. In other so-called reflection videos, rethinking videos, there is me telling you things. Now considering what I had as a content, I'm not astonished that you think it is strange. It is not what is the optimum, and it is not what would come out of it if it would have people doing it with good care and responsibility. And this is in other areas the same, I think. There is not always the thinking about responsibility. It is rather quality management. This is the construction being built, but it had been to make it more secure. I think what would come out of it, if you're interested, I think you are only if you understand this could be important. It is not a thing I was after. It was rather, and I'm now looking to the internet into documents I never saw before. It is a good thing to have digital documents, even those are no documents, as evidence in one entity itself. But the pattern shows me there had been chances, but rather for me as a child, not this. I was more in the middle, or maybe even at the end. I was said, look a little bit more enlightened, not that sad. It was some days in the Harz, and it is a mountain range, and out of season I had been there, and then it was always learning a little bit more. But looking back, I see a pattern where there always had been the expectation times will be better. 1900, I think, 83. This may have been, or 84. And it's important that there is a timeline with really difficult times. And then now understanding there had already been a time where the law had been internationally, I think, at the point where it no longer should have been, but it could have been, that quality management or something like it was not demanding, or maybe was demanding me to be told what it was about. Maybe it was possible, and not to be informed about possibilities. And this now I understand is important. But I did not have the leadership system, the Führersystem. This was rather the system of my mother, of Oma, Oldma, and Mama, and Papa, of course. Both had a little bit different approach. Your responsibility is to do what you can verantworten, what you can take in your responsibility, this German responsibility verantworten. And then wait till you're grown. But then there was another shifting, but a shift or some change does not make contracts and so on invalid. And I saw others with contracts waiting as well. And this brought me to the people who were looking for someone to take over. But it was something like looking and assessing who I was. This I knew. It was something like after school or when being grown, this could be something to work with. But no understanding, it had been maybe, and I thought so, a thing where there had been wishful thinking. I thought so, but now understanding it could have been legally something possible, but it was not done because the elders had been waiting for better times and so on. And for you it is important if you're interested in the affairs, and it is not only concerning one area, and it is not the national borders, I think, that would narrow it. But I can't say too much. I'm not understanding what I thought. For example, old leaders from 1918 had been still there 1980. That is 62 years later, and there had been quite a shifting, but their legal rights or possibilities had been there. And now I'm wondering, understanding this could have been valid, if not in one area, in one enclosure, but then in the other, because those had been international sometimes, or Bavarian, and then Prussians from Middle Germany or the eastern parts, and I don't know where it went to. And I was there, and it was not explained too much. I saw how people were doing character tests, but I can only understand looking back. Therefore, my remembrance is important, and it is there. There had been a team of specialists with horses, and those then later, when there was looking to find a duty or something to fulfill their duty, there was the Olympics. It had been in Bavaria specialists with horses being at the Olympics. And then after a time I was invited, and it is like with other occasions, not too much was explained. And then there had been, for example, it is only an example, the sponsoring, I think, of the train of the leader of Middle Germany, Mr. Honecker. I say Middle Germany, or the middle parts, it is eastern parts, what the entities are concerned. And it is like the people spoke. It was not, it is politically very correct, because there had been still the old culture areas that there had been a question from Bratislavia, or Wroclaw. My mother liked Breslau, the name Breslau, and of course I followed her idea, but it was not then pushed away to help somehow to build up the houses. And there had been even questionings what to do, and I don't know how it went from there. As a child, it was not that age, that 15 years old. At that age I understood more than a little bit, but maybe that age. You're not interested in financial things. Was it the stock market that gave loans or support, or was it donation? And it is really the case that you are not even wanting people to expect too much. But my whole idea had been to follow my role models. And those hadn't been military, I didn't know. But people said you must have some leadership in your blood. And I don't know how they came to the idea. Maybe it had been because my mother had been a leader. Papa was a leader too, but he was rather not too much at home. He worked long hours. But it is not something where my mother's had been after emancipation. It rather had been something that must have been there, even in the old days, maybe not in the mainstream. In 1900, maybe 4 to 10, you might not expect women's rights, but it must have been there, where my mother had been raised, but differently. She said she was not pleased that it had been said, a girl cannot do this, and she was somehow pushing the borders and doing and was allowed to do things. But nevertheless, I saw that the very old people, not telling me how old they had been, had a good, or maybe a very high, maybe too demanding look on responsibility. But I was raised that way also. Therefore, even if no one said you are to follow that, it is your duty. My duty had been to do what is right, and not. I was raised to be thinking myself, a self-reliant thinker according to the basis, to the basics, because in the Third Reich, there then, of course, the comrades were not neglected. And the comrades had been those who then were persecuted. And the others at the front line, there had been a little bit traveling. My father had been urged to help. It was very dangerous. Others did not like it. Therefore, not only one, but 2 or 3 traveled. And one of them had then been a judge, to judge the own soldiers. And with me, it of course gave the idea it is better not to do anything. You are in warfare, then you are fighting, and after that you have judgment of your own officer. And this was communicated, but of course not in the papers, not too much. And then I did not ask too much how it came about, because it was not common to interrogate the parents. But my mother said, I need you to help me not to make errors, or not to, it is responsibility. She once said, I'm alone and I have given my word not to be influenced. And then she explained to me, and it was weighing out what is right. And this, luckily, had to be done for the responsible 3 Allied forces, but it could well have been a little bit with others as well. And it was not wanted, but people came and pushed her. And now, today, I understand it is not that they had been taken advantage of. She was very careful, and I want to stress out, it was till now not. Therefore, it had been the level of income. This had been a widow's pension, maybe 550 D-Mark, and then welfare money, 250 or 300. And money was not spoken about as usual, as customary. But it was strange. Others did not know. But I did not know it had been that strange. Others said so. There were strange remarks. Strange, that is the word. But did I understand? No. I did not know it was strange that there had been visitors from the islands with green helicopters. I think London it had been. I had been a little child. My mother, Mama, this is my mother, Oma, and this Oma, she, I think, was having the international askings, and Mama was somehow sad that this family must have been close to her, but maybe she had a friend. There was not too much explanation, and it had been the time. And for you to understand, those are secrets, but it is rather that I understand there was not enough support. But now my idea is, if the rights had been documented to go into my hands, there should not be the misunderstanding that I didn't want to have it. But maybe the name was not known. Maybe I was falsely put in another country. Frederick, and this should not be. It then would not have come in my hands. But it is only to you to understand that since I ask, people think I'm crazy. And maybe those think I'm crazy to expect. No, this is not the case. To be crazy is if you have the wrong perception. There had been the demand of foreign countries to follow the rules. There had been a discussion, yes, with the Warsaw Pact, and then with China. There had been the building of the large water energy source. The large water body that was with a wall, then being a large, very large lake, and the water turbines would produce energy, and it is in place. And that, I remember, had been done with contracts to be followed. And there is a contract business in every field. Therefore, I can't say, because I only heard people were looking. And now, of course, having stumbled across the similarities with Victor Louise, this is my mother, the elder, and Mama, I understand. This is then of very great interest to understand. It is a thing I did not know. Maybe the others did not know. But having read in the papers, some state entities think what has come to a state pillar or entity like the princesses of old and the dukes and so on had been, this then should go in the account of the state. This is wrong. Because this had been counseling of my mother, and I was only a little bit. She said, you're my helper, but without my mother, I thought to be a counselor. She asked things as you ask your child. don't know what. It is now with me that maybe people thought not to support me, that I would not, yes, I'm a little bit now understanding, oh, even back then people said you cannot bear that. You can only be in one profession. You cannot be a doctor with a medical center. You cannot be a heart transplant and then work with Airbus in Hamburg. And the system where it was not that I thought it was economically the best idea to build the Airbus planes on several places, but it was according to what people thought was needed, necessary. And then other things were developed. And of course I understood the decisions had been made with the stockholders were living. And it had been that even stockholders moved from North America to South America to be more free, therefore understanding there had been ethics. I can not imagine that those ethics are now all blown up or melted. I think those are still there. I saw people being chosen according to their character. And it is openly to be communicated, I think, that there must have been misunderstanding, and this, I think, had been in the Federal Republic. There had been the shifting, the middle parts, Eastern Germany it had been, was coming to the whole, and then there had been the building of a democracy, of basic law in Poland, and the Czech Slovak Republic was even building up two parts of it. And that, of course, had been shifting, but it would have been possible to look after my things as well, but not without any support. You cannot do that. I saw that others who were doing things were having a talk, even being interrogated, and then people built up an office for them. And with me it is now stunning that that was not even being wanted. And from of old there had been school teachers who played me down, who said, oh, he's shy, he cannot, yes, of course, that had been the strategy. The strategy had been not to show too much. There was very much tension against people without a network, and this still is the case. And now I feel being in that danger. There is, of course, a network that is possibly having contact with the doctoring system. I was with my mother with Montgomery. He was a doctor and a leader. There had been the problem discussed to keep it out. I think it is working, but is it working good enough? A doctor who is giving diagnoses that then, by chance, by accident, it is strange that those then help to have the idea the character is not there for me to do even that what I had been helping before. I knew there is not a good start to, yes, but I did it with the help of others. It was the counseling to do something that is with too much in it because of insurance. I did it with the help of my mother, and people took over. Of course, those have the benefit of a good name, but it is now to explain. It could have been that people already understood something would then not pleasing them if I would have a too good start. And this, it could include accusations, but you can't do that. If you are in the sporting business, you wouldn't complain that you have not the best access to the hotels, to the wind channel, to the specialists. You would try to have it. But if there's a competitor and he is having better access to doctors and hotels and recreation and massage and that on, he is having the better network. Therefore, I had to accept it. The circumstances had not been as good as wanted. And this is now, for me, I feel the responsibility to explain that it was something where you could have overlooked. I went to some people and asked if those could see the demand for their worldview to help with sponsoring, but I would not apply like competitors would advise me to do. Those would say, oh, make a contract and then narrow yourself in. This rather was not what people looked in my character. I was quite often very open. I said what I wanted in life and how I would handle things. And this with a leader of barracks or of teams. And I never understood fully if there is a right to be a successor or if there is someone with a forest. Why are those looking for someone to be a caretaker? It was for interest. I don't know how many children those had, but it was strange that sometimes there came someone and said, oh, don't do it here. And I did not understand. I later asked if he thought there is a right for him because he had already been nearer what the location is concerned, nearer to the other, but it is for him to decide. And then it was strange. There had been the asking of a Netherlands woman, and then I couldn't do it. Those wanted to put me in a group I would not fit. And this, again, was my raising that hindered it, and I still see it that as something to follow, that I have to choose carefully the characters I'm working with. But you won't communicate it too much, otherwise people would think you consider yourself someone of better quality. But this had been the quality that had always been there. I knew that it was rather broadband than, as I thought, in depth. Not to have a good grade in one area, but to have average in nearly every one of those areas. Like chemistry, like biology, like I don't know what, merchandise. Then, of course, in the field of wood, of metal working and motors and so on. It is the common sense that was shown by my mother. She was having with engineers, even in the neighboring country, Netherlands, with Fokker. There had been someone, I don't know if he was a church brother, and now I understand he could have been a real brother, who then came back. But it was still difficult because of unknown. And my mother said, keep out. He's confronting, or he's even, yes, in some conflict. And with us, there had been rather diplomatic solutions. And the military, I never fully understood. I thought it was 1877 when it stopped, when those came then somehow to America with own ship line or an own network of ships. And the own had not been one individual, I did not know. It had been something like company, but not necessarily that it had not been in the hands of one. And this I explained in the other videos, in the reflection videos, that this had been asked like I knew it. But then I went to my mother, and as always I reflected it, and she said this could have been a little bit different. Or in that area people want to move responsibility. And it had been that the stockholders, or the like stockholders, maybe it was shares in other books, were having trouble, as it is that one is too successful. But this was a rumor because no one was there with any money. And this could have now been understood, that it is not lost. It is like in stock markets or bookkeeping that is there. Maybe countries have it as an income, of course, then in the eyes of those looking at it, I asked for it. I knew do not play like not being interested. And I do not want to have conflict about it. I have no military. And there's no military to protect me. There had been the asking to have special forces. And this could be proved. People thought only because there had been 100 years ago military, I could have it in the blood. but it rather had been this common sense with the knowledge of the people I had been raised with, those raised me. When I say a holiday father, I asked him things and I was glad. Some knew very much about things my papa would never had the ability to explain me, and my mother learned from me. But this is not secrets, this is knowledge about a system, how it works. And then there was the unknown, this modem telephone. It had been a telephone before the internet, but it must have been some diplomacy work to have constructed it, or for diplomacy, a little bit, I think, encrypted. But this I saw with others as well, working for government, for example. It had been a technique in the 70s and 80s. And then later I learned it was special that we had invitations. In case of emergency, we would have been taken into bunkers, like countries used to do, to protect important counselors or important people to be who are able to make decisions. My English is not very good. I'm not in the practice, or I'm not working on it. I understood I was different than the others, and there was no group. I was from the character, fitting in. It is rather the American character, I think, and even there it had been open, but not because I have things to give away, but because it had been the counseling in the construct that supports the system. But this, of course, when you're there, you're a helper. It was not my task to counsel, but my feeling had been that way. Therefore, I thought with others. And this had been always there. It was even when people asked, not me, but the other, but I heard it, or I myself was asked later, yes, directly, the water system in a city. And then the system to bring it out of the houses and make it filtered, I think, or with bacteria to make it usable again. First of all, then in the system where fish live. And this is strange now, and I'm of course a little bit shocked that instead of helping me to find out, there could be maybe the reflex. He is not fitting in, therefore we do that. But what did people do? I don't think I'm too much after the honor work. It is rather I'm looking for real assets. And those are now under administration of others. And the stock market is administering assets. And then, of course, those pay for it to be maintained. But this is not the problem. The problem is what has been the will of the real inhabitants? And then the suspicion, is there even something? There was hush, hush, and it was not in the common sense or in the golden rule, do to others as you would have them do to you. This is really a golden rule not to tell me. But it had been a time after World War II where there was much tension. And I heard she's working or he's working with the Allies, this will pay off. And this is important to understand. With my mother, I did not see it, but it could well be that she really had the right to see it fulfilled in me. She once said so, and then it was said, she is developing dementia. And Mama said, your mother is very old. Listen to her, even if you can understand. She was murmuring, and her teeth were not even fitting in anymore. And I saw a very old mother. I said not Mama. Breastfeeding the other was more than my mother, the elder, or the older. But nevertheless, both. But it is not for you to judge. And this is strange. I felt like being in a country where there was always judging. Judging if the Third Reich had been a trap for someone, and I'm not taking it lightly. I'm not taking it lightly. This is very important. And I do not want to give anything away. That I was glad there had been testing after testing, and those had been different. This will not pay off. It will not lose you, or it will not forfeit you anything. This is a different side, and this is very much important. This is very much important, but I don't know what it is about. If people are not communicating about an account that was there, and then it was somehow, in German we say frozen, it was eingefroren, frozen. It was not, it is still working, but no one can access it. I don't know what would come out of it, but I'm not wanting this to be in the papers. Because if it is true, what people said, of course as a child, you're not going there and saying, I don't trust you, or you're telling. It is my hearing it, and then make my own judgment. And if people had been asked, I would have said so. For example, really, that had been the case, how to help politics. Then there really had been the one to have more the discussion, and there had been then the help for the television. Others did, I don't know if every time did get some out of it, maybe not. With me it was a custom to see it as learning. And then I accepted it. It is different, maybe because of my traveling the world, but I never saw it as being very much with fairness. That I did not see. But I was used very much other things. And then it was that I did not feel affected. I'd rather had learned to be sensitive about it. I do not want to be better, but it is really the case that the Third Reich is not affecting me. People were looking, and even that I now see. Why again? Looking to find something. Why again? Why explain again that it was, according to my father, not in the German interest to have the racism or other things that had been against his belief. Others, I heard, were of a similar belief, but the differences for me between my mother, she was she was not giving herself credit, and then I learned she asked and went on a voyage and had a talk with someone. This was rather saying I did a little bit, but I didn't do it. That people said it had been to fulfill her duty. And then she had even to telephone a foreign center to report wrongdoing. Therefore, she fulfilled her duty, I think, as a private diplomat. But I can't do that. I don't know. There is no judge who's looking into it and saying there's a breaking of the law. I succeeded only that I now understand, in my judging, there is a negligence. There is a negligence. And this is a thing I saw others to accept it, but not me anymore, since I understand that the asking was then always on the ground that it was a present to do something, or it was, but there was not even a bank account. I went to Frankfurt and I did not get it because, but I reported that I suspect this. I had the suspicion there could something go wrong. There could something go wrong. And it had been, I think, in the 60s, my mother said she did not find out. And because of that, some fellow students left the country because the society was not as wanted. But I can't do that, first of all, and secondly, I'm now understanding if there is some roots going to really Charlemagne, I want to know. Before people said so, I thought everyone has ancestry, and this is going to the year 0 or to the Middle Ages. Why wasn't that communicated? And that I knew because hearing others complain. Others complained there had been the conflict between the knights, the so-called barons, or the dukes, or other leaders. Kings had been, of course, with conflicts with other kings, but sometimes a duke had been fighting kings, but then it was rather the stock market since, or something like it since, let me say 1800 and, I don't know, 20 or 50. And not everything, but then the war, and what I said in other videos could be true. Only to raise your interest, but also to understand I saw others who couldn't do anything out of it, or with it, because of the Cold War. And then later, the law to protect the environment. And then labor laws. Therefore, I understand it could be complex. But this is not the first I want to understand. It would blow it out of proportion, and then there are diplomats who then say we can only solve it to make something that you acknowledge you can't do it. This is not right. I'm quite able to do it with our own staff, with own bureaucrats. But this is not the question right now. It is to understand that people do not talk about money. And people do not, but there had been me asking. And then others said, oh, there are people around. And I now understand. In other countries, people around care. And this somehow has to be reported as well. This is no custom, I think, anymore, or is it with you? Where is a custom to support someone? And this, of course, is a problem even more because of the surrounding that is giving me bad names. And this has to be reported, not to accuse them. They have the right to be religious. I'm not. I'm a believer. This is different. I have not a system of laws and regulations. I'm not having that. And it had always been. This is from the start. I could explain it because I saw the world, and my mother said that in Breslau there had been pious people, believers, but those were unfit to organize resistance. There was the necessity to talk about real resistance, to have people coming alongside and help in case of, you understand, to stand at the corner in case there would come some state security. And this is the character with many people who think rather stay at home and do nothing. And it is people thought the end. 1945, no, 44, 45, and even 42, when there had been the feeling the war is lost. Hopefully this will not prolong too long, or will not take too long to end the conflict. And this really is true, that this had not been there, is clear. This is a book I found recently. And there had been talk about the whole situation. I was able to ask, and if my mother didn't know, someone else. Those are the entities who would govern. And this is clear as well. It is mostly an economic system, and the judges, even those came to complain. Too much work. And this is nothing new, but it was not in the papers. I learned about it, but it was, I don't know if people do it, still even today. that there are meetings to talk about difficulties. And this had not been inside of politics, but out of free will. And I will not give it out of my hands. People came and were very helpful, and then, of course, I said nothing. Hearing those can do it better. Huh. I'm not making something on the stage. People could have better, as they thought, a better show. And this really had been the case. And this is not one doing the work, but thinking, for example, insurance system. And there had not been the idea that one would decide. It was the working for the best solution and listening what others, this social network. And it is really in billion, I think, Milliarden. How much money is there, or had been, 2000. And this is the structure, and some things, my mother said, I can help. But she was cautious. To what area she could look and then think first, have their ideas and mine too. And this had been with her experience. And with me, I don't know what will come out of it. It is not that I was after, but it is now that afterward I'm not pleased to have heard from other countries, ask in your country. And I started to say, this is my home, but I do not feel any interest. I feel like this is a merchandise entity and not a real state. This really is true. Then others were not listening and thinking, please first start in your country and then you can show that you're able to bond with your neighbors and to work with your city. This is not what my mother did. And this is not for me to judge why it had been. But I ask as a child, why are we traveling 100 kilometers or 200 kilometers to Luxembourg, to Netherlands, to Denmark, and then people are nice? And why not in this country? Maybe people hurt, and it's, or were still hurt with wounds. They heard maybe something about my mother. I don't know. I can now come to the conclusion there had been visitors in the home and snooping around. And then something came out that was to the disadvantage. But this is me as a child with 1 year. 1 year, 12 months, or maybe a little bit more. And this had to do with regulations I didn't understand and still am not understanding. And then there had been the wrong idea. I was living in the Czech Republic. There had been the area that there had been the main base, Bremen. This is true. I don't know why it was said, so maybe it was. Then when the grandfather stopped being able to decide, it must have been some months before his death in 1934. This must have been Bremen, across the border, Silesia to Bohemia, and My mother said she did not know too much, and it had been the case. But it is important, those had accounts, my mother said, separated. Therefore, there had been the legal need. But then it had been, as with others, before the end of World War II. And even others said, oh, yeah, you had plans to have a child. Those knew the planning before the end of the war. For me, it was good to understand there had been someone knowing the father, and that I was, of course, admiring him, seeing that others said, yes, we could rely in him. Of course, have not saying if those had expected more, but now understanding the age, if that is true, could it have been an uncle who had the same name? I sometimes came to the conclusion, but now understanding it must have been, as my mother said, when those first met, maybe he was over 40. My mother said she had been 15. You see? Over 40? My mother 15? And he was always doing exercise, training in a circus, and for me it was something I had as my goal, to be as good as possible, even if I was not. And that is with others, then not being able to compare. Luckily, when I was having had bad grades, holiday father said, an uncle, you can go to school in another country. And there they have therapists, really, ordinary school teachers or therapists, writing an individual assessment, not on the grade, but on the character, and that was very helpful. In this country it was said, oh, you have some problems, and the others were more fair. Therefore, I'm not shocked that people want to have some results. This is an organization. Bundestag is the assembly, the parliament. Bundesrat, there are delegates from each federal state, and the government is, of course, for foreign relations, I think. Therefore, to expect of them to better the quality, the living conditions. This is possible with regulations, but most likely this could be done locally. And if it is not, it is the being narrowed, as always, by the idea that it is private. This is only the idea of the artist, that it is a basic law we have in this country, and not a constitution. Constitution is rather, it shall be, it is something like a role model before you, but a basic law is more strict. And they did it, I heard the people say, to have a basis for everyone. The Allied gave it as an okay, to follow the rules, and this was very much necessary for the security. Therefore, I was raised with knowledge. Others maybe saw it with more critique, and there had been critique, but I was not pleased to have too many of negative. This is behind me, not important. This is a history. It goes back the Greek idea of human dignity, the 5th century before Christ. The Stoa equality on a law, on a God-given law. The 3rd to the 4th century before Christ, and so on. That is the development or the, yes, of course, the understanding of human rights. Christendom, do to others as you would have them do to you, of course. Magna Carta is 12th century, 1215, 12th century, that is. Act of Habeas Corpus in England, 1679. Bill of Rights, 1689. Virginia Bill of Rights, North America, 1776, and so on. And it had been the case, my mother said, that those looked, and I think it was in the papers as well, looked at other so-called constitutions or basic rights, like the Weimarer Verfassung oder die Pauluskirchenverfassung, and of course to foreign ones. And it is important to understand the idea, the spirit of it. And this was differently in the in the two parts, in the political parts of Germany, the Federal Republic and the democratic republics, the so-called Middle Germany or East Germany. The Middle Germany is because the eastern parts, Prussia and Silesia and Pommern, had been in the strange situation. This has to be looked into by historians. Some said it is still part of it, but it is with foreign government. And then I heard that it is a thing where theoretically the private things could still be in the possession, but it was, I think, practically not possible. And there's always had been the tension, and so on. And knowing the sensibility, I'm not saying too much. It had been our line not to support new injustices, to correct the old. But it could have been theoretically that the new corrections wouldn't be injustices. But this only was theoretically, and I'm now looking for your help, private support, as you do with a journalist or someone looking into things to have funding privately, not too much, but not too little. And that would then mean to go to places and to ask, but I have to be very, very careful. My mother said there had been traps in the past, for example, to go to a country that has a different law. Sometimes basic laws can be broken by some, and it had been with my mother that she had me as a witness. I was still very young, but she felt threatened. The Allies, or some of them, were nervous. They wanted to have results. And then those had been, luckily, very careful. There had been the notion she could know what could be negative if that is taking too long. And it was indirectly something like a threat. It wasn't people talked all the way like that. If you don't buy the car right now, and so on, the old one could lose its value. This, of course, is no threat. This might be true. But you understand, to point to the consequences, and then the other is feeling threatened. It really had been true that those had been nervous. And there was very little, and it had only been that my mother would not be pushed to decide, and I don't know what she had to decide. What could my old ma decide? This I can't remember. I only know that people had been nervous on both sides. I want to know, but not that it is blown out of proportion. There had been the train sponsored for Mr. Honecker. And I knew that in the back of my head. And then was the saying, he is inheriting it, but maybe he couldn't. Maybe it belonged to someone. And this was something else. You cannot take what is not available. It had been with a Treuhand. I was once, to give my opinion, I thought those go from doorstep to doorstep. Maybe I didn't know how many so-called private counselors had been asked. But I said, you cannot take over the insurance in case something is not free. To the Treuhand went what was free. What was free. But now I feel it looks like a trick. I feel it. I'm not saying it is a trick. Who would benefit? But those questions have been there. And in my interest, I did not know, we counseled others. But there had been the buying of land between 1970 and 1980 or 90. Was it investment from whom? From a bank? From a bank, or was it to build a museum? Or was it to have some schools? Sometimes it had been that privately there was a building given. Now I'm going through the times and look at the type of counseling, and I'm saying this was for others. And those had bookkeepers, and those had, and are still having, I hope, good accounts. Therefore, it had nothing to do with me, but now understanding why had been the asking. I'm not giving things away. I want to use them myself, not to be an oligarch, or someone not. Not every oligarch is not working on it, but as the cliché goes, he is traveling the world. I would have had my enjoyment to look at the forest, or my enjoyment to look at the big land masses of IKEA, where those harvesting, I think it is all over the world, harvesting and then building this wood material from what those furnitures come from. I would have looked, of course, at the train lines, railway. They had been asking for an old building, like an old harbor. And this, I thought, had been to ask for support to have renovation. Yes, there had been people willing to renovate castles. There had been, I think, Carlsbad. And then my mother said, go there and look. Why, that is that expensive. Maybe he's renovating the whole city. And this I couldn't do. Because I was not there. It was somewhere else. But the asking, I can remember. And then maybe someone else went. You can't do anything. But you can look, and maybe it was done very much. And this kind of support had been done for other countries. There had been the building of national parks in Africa. I don't know who had been inside of it, but understanding there had been the asking what kind of holiday homes or holiday inns to have most likely the chance to be successful. It is assessment, or there had been the building of ships to travel the world, of the cruisers. Yes, I even learned about the national emblem of Britain. I think, is it Elizabeth? The vessel, the Cunard, and then of course Aida. This even is a name of her mother, Ida, second name. Is it exactly that? I don't know, but I remember the name, and I'm now interested. Did people overlook something, and this then would be very suspicious? Overlooking that often? No, I must have the idea. I was learning. My mother was doing it to give me the chance to stay connected. And this I now have to question. And if you are doing it, do not expect a gold mine. Please expect that there is then something like investment, or the building of roads, the Alaskan highway. I think many countries had machinery there. It had been the Panama Channel. And this now is very, not to accuse someone, it's not possible, because every country has to look, no, I don't know. The field of bank accounts I don't know about. It was looking inside, for example, the possibility to do it as good as possible. Ask people how the environment will change. Then look at the possibilities to have the so-called Schleuse in German, the water steps to bring a ship from one level to the other. And that had been with the so-called channels as well. There had been the channel building to Ukraine. And I can tell you more and more, it was nearly everything. And there are, think about it, old ladies, how many of them? I can't remember we met, because it is, for my mother, not possible to travel. But she was working, and then she was that shocked. People let me sit here, and this is something that is for all that work on charity. But now I understand it had not been charity. This is not to accuse someone. This is the idea to do merchandise, I think. You want to have the percentage, maybe 5%, others do want to have 10 or even more. And this was rather to do it solid. Solid, maybe even be satisfied with 2 or 3%. And then from the income to have 1 or 2% as welfare money to support something. This was from others. Otherwise, I would be shocked. I heard my mother asking to have support for my study. And the other said, we can only give it out of our own interests. I had to accept it. Of course, I won't. If there would be even one account only, that others would go on holiday. Yes, there is support for holiday, for safari. That people, yes, I accepted it. There had been, let me say, the social demanding people who necessarily wanted to have a holiday to relax. Maybe victims of crime. And I never saw any figure. I only heard about it. This is very important for you to understand, because I heard people say you have that much money that you help the children's homes. I said, no. I only was there as a visitor. It must have been a false rumor, okay? I myself would have helped myself first. Not to wait 2 months to buy new football shoes. Or even buy it used. And this is no joke. I never complained, but I never sent jeans to the middle parts of Germany, to the GDR, because I myself was wearing used clothes, and this we did it after war. There we had 1 room for 3, I heard my mother saying. This was normal circumstances, with others too. And this is important to understand, that I do not need people maybe even enjoying the thought. This was strange. I remember My mother saying, why are those coming and bringing me into the trouble to say something about it? But I think there was then a help, but it was dangerous to say something about it. There had been the bodyguards defending the Shah. Of course it is something I can remember and then don't know what it is about. This is me as a child, you see, and this is a memorial of, as you see, Schumacher. I remember he was saying, I'm only something like a link in the whole economic system. Yes, really, people said it is all about economics. And of course, culture is in the Ministry for Culture, for Schooling, Culture, Kulturministerium. And I cannot make much about it, but this is not looking nice. There is waste around it. And there was not a party that was excluded. It was politicians and then wanting to know something, to know where to go and so on, to have an advice. Now I understand it was the knowledge, and even that is full of knowledge, that I had, I don't know if it was me, but this was the case, that some had to flee because being driven, I don't know if it was very often, but then others helped. It was a helping system where those knew where a relative would still be on the farmland or on the castle, and it had not been legal. It was the force of shifting times, and I was on no side. When I read the book, I was on the side of the storyteller. Some had been injustice, others paid for the injustice of others. And this is the knowledge of history, and for you important, this is today. I'm complaining, not about this man. He was doing recreation programs. This was inside of the portfolio as well. I don't know what my mother, really, that is my mother, what she was about. She said there had been interest, and she was given a car, not as her own, but to use. And this is strange. Maybe it had been when my mother had been the head of the students' council. It had been for a short time but it could be something else. And if it had been of interest, my mother would have told, but she did not. This is of interest because I remember, the name is not that important, I remember I found it, but I was 2 years or 3 years old when the noble women and men said, we feel insecure. And then to give them consolation, it was said, we make it as steady as possible. And there was concrete that then was hard, like being used for bunker. This could be true, but it could be somewhere else. But it had been that the elders were fearing something, maybe having nightmares about the war. This was in the 70s, and this really is true. And it is no underlying of the false idea I have schizophrenia because of my tellings. And this is very shocking situation. I cannot even perceive it as being really had happened. But it had. I cannot put it in a box. Is it doctors not taking it serious? Is it those thought in the hospital it is like being in holiday, free eating, free drinking? This for me is a shock, but not too much. I heard it of others and did not believe it. But with me, this could affect you. This could affect you, because if you are interested and are listening, and you are listening, then you should understand there is then, even if it is not wanted, a hindrance, a wall I cannot jump. And is this coincidence that my mother was receiving the asking to help build a good home? I'm not saying that there's something in it, but it was the counseling and then the looking for the right contractor. But later there was trouble, and there then was an asking for a bank who could give another loan. And this is now of interest. Me being too young, but others had been somehow envying. Was it because my mother had circumstances like this connection being good, and the others did not have it, or she was working with the Allies? This was not understood fully. Maybe it was everything. Maybe it was everything. And this is a thing where my mother knew both, and she said both had sometimes one character. And I hope the names are right. And I don't know how my mother knew about them. I wrote maybe parallel characters of my mother. She maybe was slipping into one of the characters on occasions. I don't know if it is a secret. Maybe not. Maybe not. This I built myself as a character. No, it is my face. And this was before the interest of state and doctors. I think the false interest, but this is in the worldview. For one, the looking into history is sickness. Why look into history? Care for today and tomorrow. For him, there had been singing, and singing quite interesting songs about Santa. Santa, my mother said, had been the dog. Those had in the pension, in the bed and breakfast, something like it, were noblemen, and women sent their children. Is it true, or is it? It isn't dementia, or is it? I think not. But only since I found those photos on the internet, and then this Freddy being with others, someone telling stories, in German an Aufschneider. You listen to that, and then you think maybe he is no storyteller. I must go a little bit to the bathroom, then I will come back. was saying a little bit, this is not right. It is for a short break. This is English, not good. I hope you understand. If you have questions, please ask me, because misunderstanding could be there. Misunderstanding could be there. I always understood with others, those were not knowing everything. That is, he was not knowing maybe what he thought I knew. And there had been some misunderstandings. And this is always the case if people do not know each other too much. I don't know if everything was right, but I did not expect it. Others thought I would expect it. I was warned he is an artist. And I'm an artist myself, but I'm not making things up. This is artist work because others said so. I cannot imagine that this is Mr. Kratzinger, the later Pope in Rome. But somehow my mother's mother, maybe the mother in her so-called caring or civil family, but it was a real family. It was fully family. Even if you have two, she was a kind of sister. And with that I understood there is a kind of sistership. I don't know, and I don't know if it is still possible. And I do not even know if this is true or not. It had been something like a legendary story. You understand? She's looking a little bit like the... was it a sister or was it a cousin? This is from of old. And somehow Silesia. Maybe even the factory. There two had been living there and looking at the administration of the outside. And inside there had been a labor camp, and some said it was legal, and others said things happened that had not been inside of legality. Those had their homes, this is sure, outside, and were looking for the outside, for the surrounding. I don't know if there had been enough energy and so on. More I don't know. But I only know that it had been something where the original had been the mother, I think the civil line, or one of the civil lines, and this is something special. And I'm not making this up. I found out recently only, and that opened the knot. That opened the door that I understood. Things I thought couldn't be true, both. To be in China, and then to be in another family. Yes, you could travel, but how come? Yes, left in the war. No one else is there to explain. It was only mentioned on the sideline. And this, I felt, had been really dangerous. I didn't know, and others asked something and did not explain, because it was considered to be unthinkable of that I don't know. I even asked in foreign countries if those knew my ancestry, and there must have been something. But then another one, as said before, and I thought only one can be the original. I'm not interested in replacement. Then she would be a co-worker or working for the Duchess of Hanover, of course. You cannot share that position. And no understanding, it must have been the original, but the other had been the Duchess then. Because my mother was pushed out of it, but this is theory. This is not artist's work. This is sad enough not to be wanted. I think so. I heard that others said, this is not wanted. Yeah, a policeman said, I wanted to find out what the position of my mother was, and he said, this is not the task of officials to find out. And I looked, and no one knew. And it is quite possible that others did not want to understand, because there had been enmity between the officials and the Duchess, but she had been. Or she was having the keys. I think so. It was rather she was having the keys. But this is not the problem right now. It is you to understand. Please do not think I am wanting to look into it. I rather understand. It is strange. Maybe the mayor did not know, and the others, because those who were suspicious understood it is not of interest to look into it. This could be the work of the police, that those say we do not have the interest. Therefore, this is the question. This is Papa, and it is a painting. I think it's looking a little bit better. Papa had been young. This is my mother. She is in the middle of the 90s. And now I'm shocked. She must have been 103 years. Is that possible? Once the doctor said, your mother is older than her passport, and I couldn't find out. What does that mean? Oh, he is looking it that way. Maybe my mother was having a too much strenuous life. Yes, really, that has been the saying. Her life had been difficult. Yes, if you have a protection identity, you won't blow it open. But now my mother isn't there anymore. Yes, she was having a more strenuous. And this I already showed you, and I never had it enlarged to understand this is not Papa, this is the uncle. And this is then the sibling, but this is my old ma. And I was, I think, quite grown, as you see. Therefore, complaints is unnecessary. Others had it worse. But I had difficulties. Mama had difficulties. I think shortly after, I developed an inflammation in the ears, in German Mittelohrentzündung. And then afterward, someone came and said this was treated wrong. I can remember that. My old ma, she was then, right at that time, away. She was away, and she was called home, and she used alternative medicine, and it was then after time over. But I can remember the people being very fearful that I wouldn't survive. This mama, I remember I said I need a photograph. She was always preoccupied with the children, telephoning home, not to us, not to their homes, because of having trouble at school. She had been a school teacher. I remember that I said I need a photograph to remember that we had at least those 2 weeks, a little bit peace. But no complaining, to help a society with what you can. But now I'm suspicious people are nevertheless rather a little bit strange. Or I have not found the right one to ask. Because my mother explained a little bit at school about Breslau. And then parents came and said, this is strange, maybe it wasn't true. I don't know how much it was, or if it was cleared. But I remember she tried to. This is a day, those I don't know. Why those don't know anything. Papa, having had a better day, Mama, as you do on a photograph, at the doorstep. The problem is, I remember that at that day, I understood those are rather strange. Normally you would tell about your plans, and you would expect others to ask, how is it going? And this already had died down. This is not to the open under normal circumstances, but it is important. This is important. Mama thought it was now the time, that it was ordinary, each on his own. But with me it never had been optimal. And now it is even worse. It is very much like we care and do nothing. It is important that this has come to the point. If this is planned by someone, it is criminal. Let it look like he's having help. Yes, telephoning every other day, every day, and then me asking, please tell me if you know, and no answer. It is like having a telephone sent, but I'm sticking to it. I think the witness accounts are legally to be demanded. I want to know. I want to know why I am accused of not being able to make a plan, to make a calculation. This is their opinion. And then it is falsely. But Papa is not there anymore, Mama is not there anymore. Those would help. It is falsely being said, my finances, my financial situation is my own fault. But every month, 100 or 150 euros are missing. And the retraining, official, not a retraining program, but the theoretical right to have it, or to have help at least, that is since 2009. And it is not a thing to complain about, but it is what other people said, and I did not believe it. It is theoretically only. Disability check, none of it, because I'm quite too fit to do something. And then people expect me to look for work without a car. You can do it, but it is looking like me not doing it right. And it's important that this is not possible to be solved with the state government, but people paying taxes, 50% most likely, and reading it in the papers that the right is there, and then if he is not working it out, it must have been, no, it isn't. Of course, the labor market is not wanting someone to be a little bit older. This is the main reason, but this is my duty. I see the responsibility, because I remember, even very old, someone from the Ulanens, the very respectable, very trustworthy and good writers, You know, Ulanen, the barracks in Bavaria, in Bamberg. Those had my mother and me as a visitor. Therefore, you know, the connection is going international. And there had been expectation of the army of the Rhine for something I did not understand. I myself complained, and it was not with an echo, because you don't do so, to accuse the government. But I said, and I'm still looking at it this way, those do it pro forma. Pro forma that it is done, but then I don't know what's going on. I don't even know what was expected. And this is the situation. It is hush-hush and doing things, and therefore I demand documents, real documents. What is with the forests where maneuvers, Truppenübungen, had taken place? I heard about it. I don't know. Maybe it was doing a little bit network. Yes, it was on the table. This time I had been asked about the possibilities after the military use of a large piece of forest. And then I asked, of course, who was owning it, had been owning it, before it was taken by the NATO. And then how they had sold it. They got payment for it. And so on. And you look at the bombs still there, or don't know what, so-called Altlast, the aftermath, like oil or explosives. And the whole list is there, and then you ask specialists, and those then, of course, would be paid. And this is a thing to think about it. I don't know why my mother did it. Normally others would do it. I now remember. And it is of interest. Why it is of interest? I remembered again something else. There had been, in the 70s, the paying for every square meter for the former owners. And not knowing what politicians do, and now not having any answer, I'm suspicious, because politicians are not answering. And this is not that I want to break anything, something or anything. To bring them into prison I don't want, because I think it is an error. Maybe nothing was done with the Truppenübungsplätze. In the worst case, it went to the wrong address. No, please don't. This then would be ridiculous. If there's someone else with the same name, this is detective thinking. If there's someone with the same name, this man I did never know. He could be the grandfather. Therefore, I don't say so. This is not even the saying, the artist saying. No, it would be serious. But I didn't know him because he is already dead, and before I think I was born. I think so. But I would have been interested. I heard things about him from the perspective of a visitor in the family, from the girl's perspective. My mother must have been there, but this could have been one of the 100 girlfriends of the princess. I heard the wild story that Pippi Langstrumpf or Vicky had been some comic figure out of the palace. Sorry, this is another error. This is full of errors. This is Papa. But the most thing to remember, the most important, this is a thing I witnessed, responsibility. And she couldn't do otherwise. I often asked if she could have earned more with the merchandise she did before she had to pay for my being born. I don't know what was that expensive, maybe the helicopter flight. This was not the questions. I was not too much ashamed, but a little bit that there was that much money spent. Now understanding this was not only a helicopter flight in the emergency, this had been the suspicion of a poisoning of my mother and my mama, of both. And then I had been born, and they said the color of the skin was a little bit black. Was it poisoning, or had there been something? I don't know. And it was not talked about. This is my father, and it is a photograph that was a little bit done to represent him. A little bit worked on. This is a staging. I don't know if those had been on the horse in that outfit. The staging, and this had been in my computer, and then a program ran on it, but it is staging, showing staging as well. They're both set in the kitchen, and my mother said sometimes when Fritz Johann was away, there had been another one to show the surveillance. Those new in the next house, there had been surveillance, to show the surveillance or not the waiters in the house, but a little bit away. It is okay, but maybe the guards did know, played with them. I don't know. Maybe played alongside. No, I don't think so. Otherwise, this is the slogan where faithfulness and love or empathy meet. True peace will bond people together. This was the idea of my mother. This does not say that the others didn't know it, but it was for the women as well. The emblem, the primula minima, is rather the idea of my mother. This is Papa. The problem is he's looking that strange, and I hope this is the right data, but I'm only looking at it because I'm now a little bit suspicious how much protection had been needed. I don't think those did something wrong. There had been officials at the house, and you are of course being looked into in your file and in your character. Therefore, this had been known that it was reliable. But I heard a critique. Therefore, this was good as well. And I had been, to know this is not seen with a filtering, with a beautifying filtering, but realistic. I had been somewhere in a schooling, and those said I'm a little bit burdened. And this is true. I said there's always the chance something will come out. Something will come out. And this is now the tension again, but differently. What's going on? What are people looking after? What will be the next time? The accusation. There had been the accusation, walking around with a helmet and with a walking stick, and then there was a looking in the room. For what? I do not want this, but I can't do anything about it because no one is caring. I do not care too much, but not too little. This is the thing I remember. I enlarged it, and it was strange. Why was there then a daycare father who went with me in a park, in a recreation park, Freizeit park, to have me a ride, because I never did it again. They paid someone 20, 30 mark, and I could, don't know, half an hour or an hour, have this ride, a motor ride. Yes, it is not too fast, but it was enjoyment. Was he wanting to have a photograph? Yes, of course he did this photograph, but what was the message with it? Because being now suspicious, I see the photos, and I can imagine one is looking strange, like being Papa had not been that oh, the policeman then maybe saying, oh, are you okay? He did not look it the funny way. I don't know. It was had been the photographer. I think so. And important, it is Gerhard with a D. There had been the saying there's only one with a D. I don't know if it is still true or if it had been true. Yes, he was caring all the time. He was caring, and then he was having trouble, of course. Then he couldn't care, only to get out of trouble. And this is now suspicious as well. Why are people looking into things like an old accident? And then the police did forget to close the file. There had been a casualty, a fatality, someone running at his course. The car was maybe 100 kilometers, and then there was a looking into it, and I think 20 years later it was still open, and it gave quite problems for some days, but nevertheless it was stress. You do not need it. If it is happening, it is an error. This is me looking as I had been feeling, maybe at the time when I had been at the holiday school, and it is true. There had been the tension. This is where my mother had less tension. And I said, why aren't you living in Hessen if you feel at home? Here, she said, I can breathe. Maybe it was then near Darmstadt. There was a place, a large meadow, and there had been old houses. Today I think, why live in a museum? But Mama said she had been offered a thing, and I did not know if I would follow the idea that she would then live in a castle. Was that dreaming here? I think so. Then it had been before 1980. Therefore, my mother was someone reading many books. Therefore, I really thought she had been a dreamer, but even that would then be very much wrong. there sat a lady, and there had been a lady who said, in the group, there's one princess, someone said. Is that like one of you can be princess if you're good enough, or is there the chance maybe 50% one of you is a princess? And why was that interesting enough to even mention? Yes, the woman that said it to me had been a former girlfriend of, or was it still a girlfriend? A fellow student? I can't remember. It was strange that Mama was having talks with them that if she would have a child, the others would be allowed to daycare. And there had been from time to time a fellow student who was looking at me. And then Mama said some of them are psychiatrists. What did they say? I don't know. It was that those had been there doing a cake in the oven and baking with me as child's play, or to do it and let me help, or to be in the garden. There was always something. This is the grave of Papa and Mama. Gravesite, real one. And this had been the gravesite of my mother. This is not there anymore. And this is strange. I remember I found it on the internet that it was spoken of. And then I said, this could be a good, maybe this is primula minima, a good emblem. That man is this Freddy, and he said that in earlier days, those were able to play different characters, not as a profession, but to have as a hobby, to build character. And yes, to have a group, like a Volksbühne, and maybe this was customary at the area where Breslau was the center of something. Later I heard that someone said he was having a journal, and in the journal the new inventions were published, had been published. And he said, I don't know if it is true, I think so, I believed someone I knew, and I knew him a little bit, therefore I believed half of it had been from Silesia, Schlesien. And this could have the reason in the network, in the special network, like it had been with university cities. Maybe Breslau was even more successful. Therefore, to look into Breslau would help. To find something to reflect on. This is staging, reenactment. I don't know, I think this could be me, but maybe others did it as well. There was a little uniform, I put it on, maybe it had been, but he is no father, he is like a brother. I can remember he said, I'm the big prince and you're the little one. But this was maybe in a museum. This you know, but I don't know. But maybe it had been the case that the counselors are more important than known. Yes, of course, those with common sense know it. But maybe it is to pass the buck. Who is guilty? The one who went away or the one who let him go? Of course, the one who is then counseling. And the counseling Had never been my ambition. I want my own. Therefore, it is only to explain what I thought, because being this is officially something else. This is with the pious people, the Bible people. This is good, but it did not help. Or at labora. Maybe those thought we can't labora. This is Papa, but he did not like it too much. He said people misused his blue-eyed approach. He was quite young at that age. There he was a little older, and he was wanting to look nice. This is stage, of course. This is a thing my mother said, look like me, and they did it. I don't know why she said so. And it's important that there had been others, and it was thought there will be exchange, and this now is not there anymore. It could be that the others are influenced, and this is to report as well, that there could be sectarian influence. I don't know how much. Maybe others say he is not working, therefore he is not being eligible to eat, something like this. I don't know. This is, as I said before, a remembrance, and that is maybe where an Ulan company had been fighting. All the, is it Hazars, Husan? Something like it. It is traditional, a traditional group, company. We used to say Kampfeinheit. Also das ist dann so ein Verband. Nachher hatte man das nicht mehr gemacht, mit Pferden in den Kampf zu ziehen. Aber das hier sollte daran erinnern. Und ich habe selbst jemanden gekannt, der da auch daran beteiligt war, wie gesagt. Zum Beispiel ist er ja wirklich nur in Anführungsstrichen 60 Jahre. Wenn jetzt einer 20 gewesen ist damals und der war jetzt 90, dann ist natürlich 1980 dann schon überrundet. This was in German. If someone had been 90 years old, and the fight had been 1920, then of course, you can imagine the very old one, having been through 2 world wars, he was an eyewitness. He had been an eyewitness, and me, not saying too much, I listened. And out of respect, I was there, for example. He was wanting to show me an old building. My mother was very much into historical help, as it is said in German, Denkmalpflege. This was a visiting point of my mother. She was somehow close, but others did the same, to this Johanna of Hessen. This is to remember that even this little house was having difficulties. And what is that? Is that photomontage? And this is strange, of course. Why was it was there a change? This is very small house, and then several of it. How come it is still not that easy without a second try to build it? I don't know. Maybe the stones were special. This is to remember me. You saw it. Yes, this is. But this again is my mother not. This is then at the time where my mother was, as she said, being asked and pushed to help state affairs to be rebuilt, or state systems. She said it in a German word, that was rather, wo sie gefragt wurde und das nicht ablehnen konnte, sich für die Wiederaufbauarbeit einzusetzen. This is not exactly what it had been, but everyone knew it had been something. This was accepted. You couldn't say no. I'd rather think about it, knowing what could come out of it. Others did not survive. It was dangerous because it was a time of decisions, 45 to 55, where there had been the cities totally corrupt. Nearly no house standing anymore. And then there had to be the course of the roads. I don't know if my mother had been with it, but to understand that there really had been a damaged country, very much 1945, and then there had to be made decisions by principles how to build it and to how to make it documented. This had been Mr. Scherer, a proof that I had been a teacher. I had been a pupil. And this my mother wrote down. This is very important. But I had kept it to remember that he had said people are defending the Third Reich. We had to do it this way. It wasn't possible otherwise. And that is the background. My mother was not accepted. She wanted to be something better. You understand? This is really not my making up. This is Mama. And that is not of importance. This is a conclusion. Being born in an unknown, it rather was no birth hospital. It is strange. It rather was a home, because I was there quite long in time. And then strange that no one knew about it. And I haven't found the inside, the interior. But I'd like to know, was it 67? This in between, not very sportive, but not sick. And I think that was the whole reflection of today. And even if you don't see it, for me it is, again, with a question mark, but I think it is, for me again, luckily again, that it is worth it. But I can't afford it. This is a problem. How to afford it? How to find possibility? This really is quite strange to have it that bright. It is much too bright. It's looking strange. With people who had been coming from other cultures, you know, those refugees, there had been the saying, we endured our own. Please assess it. If it is more important than something. Because this is from the roots, or the real history of the country, this is in your taste. Some are not interested, others are. But what is strange is that since then, there is no caring but playing, pretending of care. Or is it something like a program? A real caring surrounding would ask to find a solution. This caring is rather to be a guard, to look at the point when another false doctor help can come. And this is not making the doctors the culprit. It is not good. This then can end up that people say, I am telling something that is then financially of disadvantage to the doctoring system. And this is not my idea only. It can be proved. It can be proven. Could be proven. But who go to a facility where most of the people are not worthy to be considered faithful eyewitnesses? You see, this had been the place. Being put in a place where I do not even know if the others are healthy or not. I don't know what pills those swallowed. I didn't. Only that what I need, for example, allergies, asthma. But the problem is really to be put in that box. And then understanding the only ones who are caring are maybe those who left the country. And this is pars pro toto. This is a sample of the whole situation. I'd rather make this glass looking ugly than to buy a new one, even if it is only worth $3-4, €3-4. Therefore, this is emergency publication. Don't you think you should look into it? Because a country that is not interested has, in their own history, has other problems. Learn from history that you can do it better. And in the time, there had always been the want that another time will come. Please help me. This is Friedrich. 3:33 at night time, 2 hours and 29. And really, let me see if I find a proof of the date today. No, there is. That's a need. I think this is the need, and it is not. Yes, it is working out. And let me see. Let me see if there is something about today. And I'm feeling for quite a time that the information is strangely narrowed. I don't like the idea that there is official intelligence to show me nonsense. This would be very, very illegal pampering of the information I get. Take it in mind, this is only suspicion. Thank you very much. 2 hours, 31 minutes, 4 seconds.